Hello, everyone. My name is Jess Holiday, and I'm a languages advisor with the Languages and Culture team. And together with my colleague, Lauren Dwyer, we are very excited to walk you through our Indonesian resource set for the Modern Languages K-10 syllabus.
First, we would like to begin today by acknowledging country and recognising the ongoing custodians of the lands and waterways where we work and live. We pay respect to elders past and present as ongoing teachers of knowledge, songlines and stories. We strive to ensure every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander learner in New South Wales achieves their potential through education. Today I'm presenting from Darkinjung Land on the Central Coast, and Jess is joining us from Dharawal Land in the Sutherland Shire.
Today, we will explore our Indonesian resource set, including a deep dive into our unit of work on shopping and bargaining called Maubeli Apa. We will go through what it is included and where you can access these resources. First, we'll have a look at what's included. Included in the Indonesian resource set is a scope and sequence for stage 4 and 5, including a teacher version and a student-facing scope and sequence infographic, a unit of work with over 45 accompanying resources, a student-facing unit of work infographic, an assessment task with marking guidelines, and a sample response. It is important to note that each of these inclusions are samples and not a directive of what to teach. We have provided each of these elements so you can see how the new syllabus can be applied to stage 4 and 5 Indonesian and to support you in your teaching and planning. You can use these resources in several ways. As they are, you will find everything you need to pick up and teach. This gives you and your students a whole term to experience the new syllabus's content and pedagogy. You can use them as a resource or ideas bank to pick up and choose parts to use and to adapt to suit your context. Or you can use them as a means to build your understanding, to support you to create your own programming resources. We will show you the thinking behind some of the resources as an example of how to implement the new syllabus. Before we keep going, let's have a look at where you can find these resources. You can access them on our webpage. The address shown on the screen, as well as the QR code, will take you to the landing page. Click on the Planning, Programming and Assessing Languages 7 to 10, and then click on the Indonesian tab, which will bring you to all of our Indonesian support. Then click on the Modern Languages K-10 Syllabus 2022 Support for Indonesian heading. You will then be taken directly to the Indonesian support for the new syllabus.
Let's take a look at our stage 4 and 5 Indonesian scope and sequences. In planning our stage 4 unit of work, we mapped out a sample scope and sequence for stage 4. Our scope and sequence includes the title and duration. As you can see on the title page, it's 100 hours for stage 4, a learning overview, a description of what students will learn term by term, syllabus outcomes, skills, in other words, what skills students will develop in Indonesian, and an assessment task. It's important to note that our department scope and sequence documents contain more information than what's required by NESA. We believe that the additional information better supports both you and your students, which is ultimately our goal in creating them. Like all our resources, please modify them to suit your context. We've chosen to include the skills that students develop, so the intention of the outcomes and content is clear. We've also included the suggested assessment task, and NESA's requirements are embedded in our documents. Let's take a more detailed look into the scope and sequence now. Term and duration. Our sample units have been designed as 10-week units, so they are a full term of learning. You may adjust these to suit your context and to align with assessment periods at your school. To support reporting, which may or may not fall at the end of the term, the units include a range of assessment ideas in the form of mini tasks. Learning overview. This provides the unit title and a description of what the students will learn. Next is the outcomes. The 3 syllabus outcomes are covered in every unit. However, please note that not every content dot point is addressed in every unit. The content dot points all need to be addressed over the course of a stage and are considered essential learning in order for students to meet outcomes. Next is the skills. We've included the communication and language skills for each unit as a guide to student learning during the unit. Having them here helps to cross-check them quickly with other units across the stages to ensure you see a growth in skills within each stage and across stages. Language should be constantly recycled and built upon. Finally, the assessment. We've designed an assessment task for each unit of work, ensuring all outcomes are assessed across the stage. We've also demonstrated interrelated tasks that assess more than one outcome. These are samples and not directives. Remember that assessment requirements are school-based decisions, so you may assess individual or multiple outcomes depending on your context. Remember that these documents are not prescriptive. You can absolutely design your scope and sequence differently. We provide extra information to support teachers. Your way is okay too. This resource set also includes a stage 5 scope and sequence with all of the same features as the stage 4 scope and sequence that we just saw. Here you can see the topics we've included in our scope and sequence for both stage 4 and 5. The highlighted topic is the unit of work which we've fully developed in this set of Indonesian resources, which we'll talk about later. We've also created student-facing infographics of the scope and sequences. As with the unit of work infographic, these can be displayed in your classroom or given to students so they know the language learning journey that they will embark on. You can even include them in school newsletters and subject selection books. These visuals are engaging for students and can build excitement towards their language learning. You can adapt our versions or you can create your own. The editable links to all of these designs on Canva are provided within the resources.
Now we'll move on to unpacking our stage 4 unit of work. When you access our unit of work, you will notice it's a long document. We want to acknowledge this and explain why. As I mentioned before, the units can be used to pick up and teach. Therefore, they include everything required to do so, from learning activities and student resources to mini tasks and formative summative assessment tasks. The unit of work has a unit description, including the timing, what communication and language skills will be covered, and the recommended student prior learning. This means you know what to pre-teach should you want to pick up and teach this unit in its entirety. As mentioned before, you do not need to use all of the unit. You can use parts of it, take activities from it, and use them in your own context or even within units for other languages. Timeframes, formative and summative assessment tasks, teaching and learning activities, and reflection and feedback opportunities should be adjusted to suit your context, including the specific strengths and needs of the students. Just like the scope and sequences Lauren showed before, there is a student-friendly unit of work infographic available for you to use or to adapt. Again, this is a good way to provide students with an overview of where they are going to be heading in their learning throughout the unit. When creating this unit of work, one of our main priorities was to ensure all teaching and learning activities were underpinned by explicit teaching pedagogy. This aligns with the department's plan for public education, of which explicit teaching is a core focus. Likewise, we purposely considered ways to engage students in learning. As a result, this unit uses a range of strategies to encourage student participation and engagement. Learning is regularly linked to students' world, encouraging them to make connections and appreciate the relevance of the learning in a meaningful way. A variety of tools, such as the Wheel of Names online generator, the number cards and colour cards, are used to call on students to participate in activities at random, promoting student engagement as students must remain on task and be prepared to respond at any time. Activities with point systems are included to facilitate enjoyment in learning through competition. The unit also includes activities which can be completed outside or which involve physical movement to improve student concentration by lessening the cognitive load through combining learning and movement. When crafting this unit of work, we also considered inclusivity. We have endeavoured to ensure that all students are represented in the learning. Likewise, each teaching activity has suggested differentiation strategies to assist teachers in considering how the activities can be adapted to ensure all students can participate. Finally, we know that as language teachers, authentic and useful listening resources can be hard to find. We have included an extensive number of listening activities with accompanying audio files in this unit of work. Now that you are familiar with the unit of work's priorities, I'll go through a few of the unit features. First, included in the unit of work is a sample summative assessment task with a task description written in student-friendly language to set students up for success. The summative task for this unit of work is an interacting task. As seen on the screen, the task reads, you are shopping in a market in Indonesia and want to buy a souvenir to take back to your friend in Australia. Have a conversation in Indonesian with the shopkeeper, outlining the specific item you wish to buy and bargaining to make the purchase. This task can be completed with a teacher or by two students who take turns being the buyer and the seller. Extra detail, scaffolding the dialogue, is provided on the assessment task too. Marking guidelines are also included. They are linked to outcome content points, A to E criteria, and are also student-friendly to support consistent teacher judgment. Expectations are clear for all students and teachers. Finally, a sample student response is also included for teachers. The summative assessment task was planned first and then used to backward map the learning required throughout the unit. After the summative assessment task, we then created mini-task progress checkpoints. These are formative assessment opportunities backward mapped from the end of unit summative task. There are 3 included in our unit after each learning sequence. These support students to identify where they are in their journey of learning in relation specifically to meeting the requirements of the summative task. They also can be used as checkpoints for teachers, giving them the opportunity to modify teaching and learning activities in order to improve student learning outcomes leading up to the summative task. Once the summative assessment task and mini-tasks were drafted, the teaching, learning and assessment activities were chunked into lesson sequences, each with their own underpinning learning intentions and success criteria, as well as the vocabulary and grammatical structures. Sequence learning reflects explicit teaching, whereby students can access prior knowledge to reduce cognitive load and pace instruction with modelling and examples to help ease burden on working memory. Lesson sequences may be anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. In the Stage 4 Indonesian unit of work, the first chunk is 3 weeks. Within each learning sequence are our teaching and learning activities underpinned by explicit teaching pedagogy, with each one aligned to syllabus content dot points. You can see that these are in bold after each activity. In our context, the outcomes in the syllabus are very broad. The true richness of the syllabus lies in the content dot points. Each time we have chosen the dot point or dot points, which align most strongly to the activity, keep in mind that there can be others. By aligning these dot points to activities, we're showcasing what the syllabus looks like in the classroom. It also helps you to see the breadth of content covered in each unit. We recommend including and tracking them within and across your units to ensure you cover them all across the scope of a year. Our unit also includes differentiation strategies for students requiring additional support, for high potential and gifted students, and for students with advanced proficiency in the target language. The strategies are neither exhaustive nor definitive. They are just examples of how we can differentiate to meet the needs of a range of students. This example is how we provide a differentiation for the first mini task, which requires students to create a shopping list for an Indonesian dish they want to make. They must include quantities and an estimated price of each item on their list. Then, students engage in a conversation with their peer to collate their shopping lists for each of their dishes, and then use familiar phrases to ask each other what they want to buy, how much they need to buy, and what they think the price will be. Please take a moment to read the differentiation examples on the screen. Throughout the unit, we have included opportunities for student self-reflection to support students to gain ownership of their own learning and build a deeper understanding of how the language can be applied to the summative task, as well as to identify which skills they need to strengthen and where to go for help. Likewise, we've added in a checkpoint to remind teachers to reflect on the learning so far and provide an opportunity to consider what adjustments are required. In our unit of work, we have suggested the use of an anchor chart. An anchor chart is a visual summary of learning. It allows students to organize content and assists them with learning and memorization, as it can be easily and often referred to, both in class and when revising at home. Throughout each learning sequence, when new vocabulary, expressions, or language structures are presented, we suggest that students add them to the anchor chart. In this unit, we have suggested a digital anchor chart using Padlet. There are many other digital tools that can be used, or they can be handwritten. Rather than having individual anchor charts, the teacher may choose to have a collaborative one for the whole class. Brain breaks are a new feature incorporated for the first time into the Indonesian unit of work. They are used to lessen cognitive load, allow students' concentration capabilities to replenish, and to improve focus and attention. The most effective type of brain breaks are ones which use both sides of the brain. In our unit, we have incorporated brain breaks which are still connected to the learning, but that also incorporate an element of movement, ultimately igniting both sides of the brain. Please take a moment to read through the samples on the screen. Exit tickets appear throughout our units of work in each chunk of learning. The first exit ticket on the screen is an example of how they can be used as a fun and quick way to check for understanding and to provide the teacher with a quick snapshot of the progress students have made that lesson. They usually increase in difficulty as the unit progresses and as the level of language the students are learning increases in complexity. The second exit ticket on the screen is an example of how exit tickets can be used to encourage student reflection on their learning, particularly in the lead up to summative assessment tasks.
Thanks, Jess. So now that we've had a look at the elements of the unit of work, let's take a look at some of the activities included within it. The teaching and learning activities demonstrate the outcomes in action, with outcome dot points from the modern languages syllabus aligned to the teaching and learning activities. They contain hyperlinks to the resources that you need to complete each activity. They unpack the pedagogy behind each activity. They contain suggestions for differentiation or variations, and they have a focus on inclusivity for our learners. As we've said, this unit of work is designed to pick up and teach, so we've included a number of PowerPoints to explain key language points. For example, there are separate PowerPoints to explain to students how to ask and say what they want to buy, how to ask for and say the price of something, to describe and specify items using Young Mana, and so on. They also include activities to help you practice the structures with your class. These PowerPoints are included as files and can be downloaded and edited to suit your context. Here you can see the content dot point from the syllabus aligned to an activity using the PowerPoint titled "How much is it?" You'll see that the unit of work includes activities that introduce and drill language structures and vocabulary. There are a variety of tools used to showcase variation in how vocabulary can be introduced and practiced with students. For example, flashcards with accompanying activities, games, or online tools like Quizlet and Kahoot. Next, we know that interacting is a big focus of the new syllabus, and it's a new challenge for all of us to think about how students can interact spontaneously in Indonesian in the classroom based on the context that they're in. The unit includes a range of activities to promote this interaction between students in an authentic and relevant way. Some of the interacting activities include dialogue prompts, story cubes, guided conversation, speed chatting, as well as a range of games like Munching, Go Fish, Find Your Match, charades, games using flashcards and mini whiteboards, and more. I'll talk a bit more about games in a few slides' time. Here you can see an example of how an interacting activity is described in the unit of work with examples and aligned to the content dot points and an outcome. As Jess said earlier, one of the priorities when creating this unit of work was to include plenty of listening tasks to help Stage 4 students in developing this skill. Each learning sequence chunk includes a listening activity resource, which includes 3 listening files and an activity for each, as well as answers. And if you want to change the text to suit your context and read or record them yourself, all of the transcripts are included as part of the activities too. Here you can see an example of how the listening activity is described in the unit of work and aligned to content dot points and an outcome. Using games in language teaching is a way to motivate students and a way to provide input as well as extensive practice of language structures. This unit of work includes many games, and we have mapped out everything logically for the teacher. Each resource includes an explanation of the game, rules, any cards or images you need, what you need to print off or prepare, and ideas for variations or differentiation strategies. One example of a game included in the unit of work is the Supermart board game. As you can see, the resource includes the game board and every card you need to play with your students. The resource also includes the rules of the game, translations of any Indonesian included on the game board, and the game cards, and a list of game-specific phrases and language in Indonesian that students can use while playing the game to facilitate authentic interactions. Once again, every time you see a game or a resource that we've designed using Canva, you will also find a link to the editable template so that you can adjust any aspects to suit your context or to create your own variation. Finally, some of the teaching and learning activities in the unit of work include links to other resources online that were already existing, such as websites or videos. We've created worksheets or other activities to complement these existing fantastic resources that are online. Here you can see how viewing a YouTube video about Jalan Malioboro is incorporated into the unit of work with an accompanying activity and ideas for reflection. You can also see the content dot point from the syllabus aligned to this activity. That brings us to the end of our launch video for the Indonesian resource set. Before we conclude our presentation today, we would like to point out a couple of avenues of support for the syllabus. If you have not already completed it, the micro-learning our team created on MyPL is an excellent introduction to the syllabus. Additionally, the 2024 Term 2 School Development Day, which has already passed, had a focus on the implementation of the new curriculum across all KLAs. The Languages and Culture team developed a 90-minute support package for the day, and this support focused on the Modern Languages K-10 syllabus, including a reflection on how you're feeling after using the syllabus in Term 1, a presentation on interacting in action, and a Q&A session. This PL is still available to access if you missed out on it. Don't forget, we also have a statewide staff meeting every term in week 4, followed by local network meetings in week 7 to 9 across New South Wales. And finally, please feel free to contact us or any of the Languages and Culture team if you have any questions or need advice or support. We are always happy to assist, and our contact details can be found on our website or through the QR code on the screen.
Thank you so much for watching the launch of the Indonesian resource set with us. We hope you enjoyed this presentation and find the Indonesian resources helpful in your classroom.